Hi, I'm Mo for YouTube videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian, and I make conversational commentary videos about both of those things. This one, I thought was going to be me doing like a lighthearted, excited video about something I love because I was excited to have hit 5,000 subscribers, and hi, way more than 5,000 of you now suddenly. Hello. A less exciting update is I am a lot more frustrated about things in the state of discourse around Chappell Roan than I initially was when I scripted this video. So what I thought was going to be like a neat little 3-hour both discourse and career summary so far of Chappell Roan, instead, this is part 1 of 2. And I don't even know for sure just 2. It could be more. It's probably gonna be more. People are going to continue to be extremely weird about Chappell Roan, and I am going to continue to want to talk about it. Like, the amount of times over the last couple of months where I've been like, oh, I'm glad I didn't finish that video yet. I'm not doing that anymore. We're gonna just open a dialogue. I'm gonna start today by telling you a lot about the beginning of her career, because obviously I've already been working on that part, but rather than splitting off at the end and talking about parasocial fan dynamics the way I was originally intending to, we're going to talk about her recent political statements and everybody being wild about them in ways that I, even as your normie lib correspondent, even as somebody with a coconut tree emoji in my bio until election night, think is overblown. If you don't feel like sitting through the whole thing, let this be your takeaway, because it feels fair for somebody to just say this. Chappell Roan is not a Republican. She's not a secret conservative. She is not profiting off of the LGBTQ community or gay imagery or whatever. Stop being weird about her. This video, I'm trying to explain why I want people to not be so weird about her. In a future video, when we talk about the Parasocial Pony Club itself, we'll talk about more ways that her fans specifically are being weird about her, but I do think a lot of what I want to criticize today and a lot of what I'm currently angriest at is actually not coming from inside the fan base itself. So if the energy is different in different parts of the video, it's because it's been restructured partway through. You can find a bunch of the parasocial parts of it on my Patreon, actually, and we'll talk more about that later. But I want to talk about Chappell Roan. I've been talking about Chappell Roan for a long time, not just since I started working on this video towards the beginning of August, but longer than that. I've been talking about Chappell Roan to a lot of my friends, and a lot of those friends I'll get to introduce you to in today's video and in part 2. A lot of my more long-form videos are typically like a bummer subject material. Something that I'm sitting down to film multiple times is normally stressing me out a bit more than I thought that this video would. So I really just wanted to do something kind of like easy and lighthearted, like I said, for a 5,000 celebration. But I've just been seeing people get increasingly angry at Chappell Roan over increasingly stupid shit over the course of me working on this, and I realized either I could wait and I could be really thorough, or I could speak to this relatively quickly, and I decided to do the latter. That does, however, mean that this video turned into a little bit less of a happy-go-lucky, how amazing is it that this lesbian drag queen is taking over the world, and a little bit more of a leave Chappell alone kind of vibe, which you've likely already picked up. And that also means, of course, that we will be talking about recent discourse, and a lot about recent discourse. But I do want to fill you in on her career before we get there, just in case you aren't already aware, though I do assume most people who clicked on this video are pretty aware of Chappell Roan by now, even if just by cultural osmosis. Going through the beginning of her career is just a genuinely interesting thing to do. I know a lot of other channels also have already done that. I already knew I wanted to make a Chappell Roan video by the time I started seeing them pop up in my sidebar, so I have not watched them yet. I've been watching like interviews that she did and podcasts that she was on instead when I want a Chappell Roan fix. Another thing I'm really excited about finishing this video, once I finish part 2, is that I can go watch other people's. Maybe let me know in the comments who else is making Chappell Roan videos that you have loved. Chappell Roan is a pop star, and she's a lesbian, just like me. The lesbian part, not the pop star part. Chappell Roan is obviously a stage name, right? Like, it's obvious Somebody's going to say something really stupid. Somebody's already said something really stupid, but I'm going to tell you about it later. Just keep in mind, this is clearly a stage name. As soon as you heard that name, you were probably like, a person is not named Chappell Roan, right? It's a stage name, and one that she picked after her grandfather. This is from an interview from a publication called Churwell.
I have never felt super connected to my real name, Kaylee. My grandfather's name was Dennis K. Chappell, so I took Chappell in his honor. Before he passed away in 2016 due to brain cancer, I told him that I was going to be Chappell for him. Roan came from his favorite song, which was called The Strawberry Roan, an old Western song about a pinkish red horse. It's a very sentimental name. I do still wish my name was not Kaylee in real life, though.
And as referenced in that interview, Chappell Roan's birth name and legal name obviously is very well known, but I don't feel a need to refer to her that way because she clearly does not go by it in the contexts in which I'm speaking about Chappell Roan. We're not talking about the real private individual human being, we are talking about Chappell Roan, the lesbian drag queen, the musician, the stage persona, the project. She refers to it as a project very often, as something with a team behind it, taking pains as often as she can to credit her stylist, Genesis Webb. Another group Chappell Roan is constantly crediting are drag queens. I mean, Chappell herself is a drag queen. This is terminology that she uses for herself, and one of many, many things in her career that she directly will give credit to a drag queen.
I had a drag queen open for me in London named Crayola, and she was like, "Oh, you are a drag queen." And I was like, that was the first time I'd ever been told that.
What did they mean by that?
Because I was just getting ready and like my makeup wasn't done yet, and I was like, "Oh, I'm like you. I need to get my makeup and my clothes on and kind of transform them." And she was like, "Honey, you are a drag queen. You're not just getting makeup on, you're a drag queen." And I was like, oh my God. Like, that was very altering. Like, that there was something that switched in over the summer when I did that in June.
Chappell Roan loves drag, and it feels worth noting that she doesn't love drag in the way that, like, Katy Perry loved her gay fans and had two men kiss in the Firework music video, right? Chappell loves drag. Drag performers love Chappell, in part because her relationship with them is so mutually sustaining. Chappell hires local drag performers, both drag queens and drag kings, to perform during her concerts when she goes on tour, and I love her. I love that she does that. I think it would be easy, and, maybe it's something that would make sense as she gets larger for her to have, like, a specific dance crew that comes with her. But it really feels like something that's really nice and beautiful for her to be able to pour into these communities that she's stopping in for a night. Introducing people who like her music and what she does and who are, like, longing for their local gay community to local drag queens who are probably incredibly well set up to introduce them to the rest of the gay community in their area.
Well, also at this time, it's like drag in America is obviously currently under threat from laws. Like, there's something quite political almost about you having this be part of your show. Mm. How does that make you feel as a performer that drag is under threat?
I mean, it's devastating. Like, I performed in pretty much all the places that it's banned. And you can feel it with the queens, like the heaviness in the room. And I think it's, like, really important, especially in those places, to keep drag alive. And there are age restrictions in those parts, but I think we just have to keep doing it. Like, drag isn't going anywhere. I don't know what these lawmakers think. Like, it's always been around. It's not going anywhere. So I think it's most important to give those queens and kings a platform and just showing the world that, like, this is joy. This isn't whatever the fuck you think it is. Like,
I love that she does this. I think it's really cool. It also strikes me as something that may not stay completely sustainable with, like, her whole career. And if that happens, it won't make me like her less, but it does make me like her more that this is how she does it while it's possible to do it this way. I hope that makes sense. Chappell also repeatedly references famous drag queens. There have been very, very high publicized versions of this, like when she dressed up as Divine. But I think so much of just the way that she has built her persona and her character, it's a drag queen. She's a drag queen.
I really have taken that on as an identity. And it's been very freeing to be like, oh, Chappell Roan is my drag project. And I think that's also helped personally to separate it as a job and as like a project, and then there's me as Kaylee.
But Chappell's career actually started long before she identified either as a lesbian or as a drag queen. Chappell Roan was signed to Atlantic Records when she was only a teenager, following the success of songs that she had posted on YouTube.
And now Atlantic Records, and which, by the way, is the same recording label that they signed Coldplay, Bruno Mars, David Guetta. I mean, huge artists. What does that feel for you? What do your parents say?
I'm so grateful. It's just still pretty mind-boggling. My parents are so proud of me, and it's a little bit weird. I'm the only person in my town who's like ever been signed.
Because it's a small town.
It is a small town. So
dreams do come true.
Dreams do come true.
I love it.
I like that you said I was a minor. Like, your brain's not even fully finished developing yet, and you get all this attention and from these big major record labels.
Yeah, it's bizarre and should be illegal. I think it's very, very weird that these like people who know so much about the industry and like it feels very predatory. I did not think that was right. And it's not like my parents knew. My mom's a veterinarian. My dad's retired from the Navy. It's not like we knew anything about the show business in Willard, Missouri. I felt very isolated and very confused for many years because I didn't understand what was going on or the things I was feeling. Because not a lot of kids were going through what I was going through. I didn't have anyone in Missouri who was.
Now that the internet is angry with her for, as I said, increasingly stupid shit in increasingly stupid ways, there's an attempt to say that the music camp that she went to, Interlochen, is an Epstein-funded music camp, and that explains a lot, or whatever. I know I said we were going to talk about the beginning before we got into recent discourse, and I've definitely seen more people saying that is a bananas statement to make than I have seen people genuinely agree with that point. But, sourcing from the Interlochen website here, Epstein attended and then later was a donor to Interlochen, but they didn't ever find any record of him like doing anything on campus when they did investigations into his activity in 2008. But they did remove all donor recognition at that time. Again, 2008, so way before Chappell would have even attended, but also even people who did attend at that time, like that's not what it means. Like, that's saying somebody's like, oh my God, it's just so stupid. Like, I really don't need to dignify it with a response, but I want to mention it just to point out how far people are reaching for something to try to, like, use to throw at Chappell Roan at this point. And I think in like 3.5 months, when everybody's really sick of this hate train, it's going to sound ridiculous that anybody was even bringing that up, which is another reason why I just wanted to mention that it's even happening right now. Because part of what I like doing in my videos, clearly, is kind of talk about the ways that I'm seeing people talk about things, and I'm reporting on what is going on in the hellscape of Twitter, because I know a lot of you are smart enough to stay away. This is what's going on Twitter. It's a lot of this. You're good to be gone. I'll let you know if you miss anything important, but you're really not. If you are on Twitter, though, I'm at Ophidokes. Chappell got invited from Interlochen, I believe, actually, to showcase for a few different labels, and she ended up picking Atlantic, where she would stay until 2020, even though they really didn't seem to do much of anything to push her first EP. And I was initially going to tell you a lot more about both that first EP and her album, but ultimately it doesn't serve the purpose of this video, so again, you can find more of this on the Patreon cut if you're interested. But the EP was, in stark contrast to everything we now think of when we think of Chappell Roan, in contrast to everything that I first mentioned when I was describing her, the EP is not gay. It's pretty good for a teenager, I suppose. I like a couple of the songs enough, but not enough that I find myself going back to them. And I'm really, really glad that she eased up on the cursive singing. But you can get a real vibe from listening to that EP that she was getting positioned as like a Lana Del Rey Halsey type, maybe. The music couldn't be about a gay awakening yet because it hadn't happened for her yet. Her gay awakening wasn't something that would happen until she moved to California. Like I said earlier, I want to introduce you to some friends of mine in this video, and I want to start with a friend of mine who I have something in common with that I think we both have in common with a lot of my Nuance Corner friends, and also a lot of people who my Nuance Corner friends are friends with. The urge as a 20-something lesbian to be very evangelical about Chappell Roan. You've probably already picked up on that in me and how much I love her. It's something that I picked up from my friend Rachel Ann. The only reason I even have the credit of having Chappell Roan songs on my 2023 Spotify Wrapped is solely due to my friend Rachel Ann, who I am very excited to get to introduce to all of you here in the Nuance Corner.
I lost my world's best misandrist mug, I think. Actually, maybe it's in the back of my cabinet. I bought that shit when I was a Tumblr teen.
I remember you having that when we were on Tumblr. When we went to Tumblr together.
We graduated Tumblr University together. Tumblr High.
So I already mentioned you in the video because I said my friend Rachel Ann put me on to Chappell Roan. Was it Femininomenon? Maybe it was Naked in Manhattan.
Maybe.
I think it was Naked in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
I think I remember you sharing Naked in Manhattan and being like, okay, I heard Casual a while ago and I liked it, but like this is where it's at.
Totally. Like I love her whole discography, but my best friend Ariel showed me Casual. She was like, "Oh my God, you're gonna love this girl." And I heard it and I was like, yeah, it's like okay. But then I heard everything else and I was like, okay, yes, exactly. I'm here. I'm so here for all of it. It's so good.
And Rachel Ann and I talked about a lot of things, again, fuller cuts on the Patreon. But one thing that did come up before I'd seen quite as many people attempting to weaponize Chappell's sexuality in a way that we have to talk about later through like a different lens, like I promised we're going to get to it. But we talked about, you know, the reason that gay awakening hadn't really happened yet. A couple of those reasons, actually. One of which being that Chappell Roan had a long-term boyfriend at the time of writing that EP, and also at the time of writing much of the album, The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess. Also, lots of lesbians have had boyfriends. I'm deeply, deeply uninterested in trying to litigate that kind of shit. Shocker, like, even a bunch of lesbians have had husbands and children. Husbands who they loved, and then they're lesbians. Like, it's looking at somebody having had a boyfriend to say that they're not a lesbian is just deeply regressive bullshit. And again, we'll address later the fact that people are doing this to punish her for having opinions they don't believe in, but like, we're not there quite yet. As of my conversation with Rachel Ann, I was just thinking about the fact that I thought that was cool. I think it's really neat that she's open about the fact that she's had a boyfriend, and we talked about that.
I think the ex-boyfriend is like really interesting Chappell Roan lore to talk about, even though, okay, so I mean, a lot of this video I'm being like, we don't know Chappell Roan as a person, and obviously we also don't know the boyfriend, but I do think there's something kind of revolutionary about her talking about having had a boyfriend for so long, and like, I mean, God, even just when I first saw her do that, like, Femininomenon is about how men can't make me come, I was like, holy shit. And I was, at that point, that's when I started, like, if I referred to her as somebody, I would be like, oh, she's a lesbian.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it wasn't until very recently that she, like, actually explicitly was like, I'm a lesbian now. And I think a lot of people were surprised, but all of the lesbians I know are like, yeah, we all knew Chappell was a lesbian for a long time.
We've been new. Like, this is old news. Yeah, totally. Like, it's like if you know, right? And I feel like she was kind of flirting with it publicly for a while before she like came out and was explicit about it for straight people. But like, yeah, definitely.
What advice would you give to queer fans who are still finding themselves?
I would say be gentle, that it's like blooming into something, but it's, you know, it's not linear of just like, oh, I know myself more and more and more. I think it took me a second to really wrap my head around queerness. And I think that is the case for every queer person, that it's just like, it's stages of like, oh, this is who I am. Oh, actually it's not. Or actually, maybe I'm not just, you know, bi. Maybe I'm actually like more than bi. You know, maybe I'm pan. Maybe I'm, you know, there's so many different journeys, you know.
Yeah, I feel like men can't make me come is like a pretty like, okay, so you're not dating them, right? Right?
Yeah.
Like that Star Wars meme. Like
And I think what I really struggled with was, and still is, being gay enough. I think that's something that I feel pressure doing. And I don't know, sometimes I just feel like, do I belong in the queer community sometimes? Just like within, I don't know, myself. But I know that's not the case. It's not real.
Yeah, anyone who says otherwise.
I mean, granted, yeah, like, I obviously belong.
and when we think of like a late bloomer lesbian, I'm usually not picturing a 26-year-old. I'm usually picturing somebody who like had a family and children and then is like, oh, wait. But like, that's not a journey that we get taken on very often by like famous sapphics.
So yeah, I agree. It is very unique. And like I said earlier, like it's very exciting to me just because it speaks to my own personal experience. And like I know who I am and I always have known who I am, but like it is nice to see that validated in the mirror of like this actual like superstar. It's very cool. Yeah, it's very cool. Very validating.
A lot of it came from daydreams and fantasizing, and I found my queerness and like my identity through the imagery of the album. So with, you know, with the music videos, the photos, the outfits and the makeup, and I realized I really connected with drag, and it kind of came with like the creative world. The music, yes, but like the world building is really what, you know, kind of realized my queer identity.
And another friend that I get to introduce you to, if you haven't already seen my video about the town that I grew up in, where Tim Looper still lives, is my friend Tim. Tim had not previously heard Chappell Roan's music, so I got to be the one to introduce her to him, which I'm very proud of. I adore Tim Looper. You do not have to have seen Ruthless to follow our conversation here, but like if you watch this and you want more Tim Looper, that's where you can find more Tim Looper, as well as at his socials, which are linked in the description below.
I'm actually embarrassed that I had not heard the music yet because I'm usually on top of that kind of thing when it explodes out there, especially when LGBT are in the mainstream. And now it's like, oh my God, this is almost like my thing was it was almost like a Katy Perry, Ariana Grande, Gaga mix for me because I love their skills of their songwritings and the fact that it's not bubblegum pop. Billie Eilish, another one. I love, love, love that style because it's almost the same style as everybody, but it's not, you know. So with that flair, I think that if you're trying to use her as a role model, and I'm not sure with your video where you're going with it, but my thing is I'm looking at it as a connection to the community and influence a role model to let you know that look at JoJo. I mean, come on, you know, you have this little girl growing up on Dance Moms, everybody's falling in love with her, and who would have ever thought that she was going to be our lesbian sister? You know, songwriters are creative, gay people are creative. I She plays her cards right. She's going to be one of those. She will be one of those household names as long as she's pushed and talked about and brought to front and center. Because, like I said, I was embarrassed. I had no clue who you were even talking about. So I went on YouTube and I was like, "Wow, woo, cool, yeah." And then you kind of got that where you're bebopping and thinking about it. But I love the music. Where did she come from? I mean, just she went viral on TikTok or something, or
Chappell Roan comes from Willard, Missouri, a place where she describes as having more cows than people. If you're not super familiar with the geography of the United States, Missouri is Midwest, but also, like, not usually gonna get you argued with if you say it's the South. At least I don't think so. Tim and I come from Arkansas, which is right underneath Missouri. Chappell has these really complicated and beautiful feelings about the place where she's from. That's another thing that I talked with Rachel Ann about.
I had written this down on my notes too. This just bullet point, lesbianism, the South, and wish fulfillment. I watched today, I hadn't seen it before, but I watched today the like 2 little like 7-minute long documentary style videos of her like in Willard, talking about her career, and like her grandparents are there. And
we heard her voice the first time at a junior high talent show.
Well, we didn't know she could sing the first time we went to see her. And I didn't cry, but my eyes leaked a lot. But I loved listening to her sing.
All the grandparents were crying by the end of the, and so it's kind of that way every time we see her. It's emotional.
And we always get emotional.
Yeah.
Because we love her so much.
Well, hot to go as well, your grandparents are in this video.
Yes.
Are they aware of what the song's about?
I think so, and I just think they ignore it. I think that's how they, I mean, that's what you do in the Midwest. It's like, it's very much, oh, you know, Kaylee's dating a girl, but it's really just like her friend, or like you just kind of ignore it. You don't really ask any questions. I kind of feel like my family is like that with my entire project. Like, I highly doubt my grandparents listen to Casual, you know what I mean, or Red Wine Supernova. Like, really, I think Hot to Go is pretty tame.
I love her love of place and like her like reverence for where she's from. Because as a lesbian from the South, I also have a lot of like complicated feelings about where I grew up and like my family and just all of that stuff. But like, I do have a genuine love of the place where I grew up, and I feel very connected to it in like a formative type way. And it's something that comes into my writing a lot. This intersection of identity, and like, it's almost a point of pride, which it's like, that's like you can't say Southern pride. That's not what I mean, and that's not what I'm saying, and you know this. But like, there is something special about queer people are everywhere. We literally are everywhere. And like, where I grew up, my graduating class had like 200 people in it. There were like 2 out gay people in my whole school the whole time I like went through school, like K through 12. Maybe 3. I really don't like, there really were almost none. And definitely no gay women, none, no lesbians. A few like rumors, and you know, like it comes out after we graduate and stuff, and like there were some like hints of things going on, obviously, but nobody was like out. And so it's like very lonely, like she described, because you kind of feel like you're alone in the world.
And because the way I was brought up, I wasn't exposed to, I mean, honestly, hardly any gay culture. No one that I was like really close with was like out. So it was all very like reserved and like serious. So until I like went to LA and West Hollywood, I wasn't really like aware of how campy life could be and how exaggerated. This job allows me to do and be whoever I want because there's no boundaries. Like, and that was like the point of it all, you know, to be anything I wanted, because I feel like here in Missouri, I feel like I don't allow myself to be that version of that here in Missouri. You know? I feel uncomfortable. The last time I was, like, it was out on the stage at the Galois this past tour in March. I looked out and I thought I would recognize everyone, and like I didn't hardly see anyone in the crowd I knew, which I was like, oh my god, where were all these gay people? Are they hiding? Like, all of them. I was like, oh my god, like, this is amazing. And for like the first time ever, the wall of me, the fear of me like not belonging in my hometown was like broken by knowing that there are so many queer people here.
And that's how you spread diversity to everyone, is to actually see and portray that diversity. The fact that from being from Missouri says everything, because, you know, they're kind of like Arkansas. We're kind of a little farther back in the scale than New York and California, that type of thing. But with that being said, when we're having these breakout artists, well, and it still is a breakout artist, because to me, anything under 10 years, you're still finding yourself somewhere. And I think it's interesting how you can hear a song or hear a speech or a podcast, and that person's automatically either going to connect to you or they're not. And you're going to be able to tell one song, one verse, one speech, or one podcast, whether you are going to be interested in what else this person has to say. And with this artist, you're going to want to follow to see what else they have to say.
I've always wanted to tie my project back here. Like, for some reason, even though I felt like I didn't belong, it was just like a part of me to be like, I have to honor this place that raised me, no matter how I feel about it. Like, it's just always going to be a part of me.
Love her love of place, and like it's literally in the title of the album, and that's so cool to me as somebody else who also writes about place and identity. And in fact, like I feel like most of my stuff right now is about place and identity. Yeah, it's just so special being tied to a place like that, and like being able to hold it in all of its nuance, because like it was not romantic growing up where I grew up. Like it wasn't. There were lots of horrible things about it, and it was very small and narrow and white and racist, and homophobic. But there's so many things that I love about it, and like the landscape and just being out there and being connected to nature. Like that's really where I connected to nature for the first time. And it's such a huge part of my life now. And I don't go home super often, for many reasons, but I do appreciate that about her and her work and the way that she talks about where she's from. And she clearly loves being from there. Like it's an important place to her. And I think that's why Pink Pony Club makes me so emotional too. Like I cry when I hear Pink Pony Club. Like I hear her talk about it as like a dance banger, like a club song, and I don't see it that way at all. Like it makes me weep in my car. Like I'm not really dancing to it. It is a banger, but like that, like I don't live super far from where I grew up, but like, and I don't live in the big city or whatever, but like it is kind of like that, like having to leave a place and like knowing that that's the right thing for you, but still holding this like tenderness for the place that you came from that kind of like helped to shape your experiences and how you see the world. So that's another, I guess, facet of like why I love her so much, and I find her so deeply relatable to me specifically. But yeah.
I really love how much she loves where she's from, and I love the juxtaposition of like loving where she's from and also being like proud of the fact that she likes living in California now too. Like it's not like, oh, I hate California, I really want to go back. It's like I love who I am in California. I love what I get to do and who I get to be in California. I just also love this other place, and I don't love it so much that I'm not gonna leave it. And like that's not what we typically hear when people talk about like leaving a small town for California. It's usually like, oh, thank God I got out. Like you're not, I mean, like you said, like obviously there are also other reasons for why we don't want to say like, oh, I am proud of my Southern heritage. But there is, especially with like city gays in particular, there's this idea that you have to kind of like make apologies for where you're from. Like you have to be glad you got out. You have to feel like you got the last lifeboat off of the Titanic. And it's like seeing somebody express something that is like still, okay, I enjoy living in a big city. This is where I want to be, but that doesn't make like a moral weight that the city is better than the small town. That just feels really important and really cool.
Totally. I'm glad you brought that up because like I still live in the South and the South has much to atone for as an area, as we know. But I almost feel like, you know, even where I live right now is the South, but I feel like I almost have to overcompensate for like people that are like the South is bad. You know what I mean? Like the demonizing it as a whole area and not like this very diverse, vibrant
The most
thing.
diverse part of the country, I am.
Yeah.
Sure.
So like I feel like I have to overcompensate by being like, I love it here. But like I do love that that's kind of at least maybe I'm biased and this is just what I'm seeing in my own algorithms and like the people that I interact with, but I feel like I am seeing at least in like folk circles and like locally this return to love of place and like this celebration of like Appalachian culture in particular and like being proud of where you're from and not necessarily like you said having to shirk it and apologize and being like, oh my God, I'm so glad I made it out of there. Like I think that I don't have a thicker accent because I actively tried not to. And like my family doesn't have like thick accents or anything, but like when I go home, it's definitely more there. Like it's more present when I'm talking to my family or when I'm talking to other people like from where I'm from. And it's not I hate when it becomes exaggerated because it sounds like I'm faking it. Like it sounds like I'm doing it on purpose and I'm really not, but like sometimes it does come out and it's like that is something that I feel like because I grew up in this small town and because these things like being a redneck were associated with like all of these horrible things like racism, homophobia, and like I wanted to distance myself from this culture that I grew up in. Um, but I'm glad that now I get to, as I said, like hold all of it. Like I miss my pickup truck. I drove my shitty pickup truck to school every day and like drove around on back roads because there's nothing to fucking do in my town except go to Walmart and Waffle House and like yeah, it's just so special and it's cool to see somebody who's like mainstream who like you said gets to do that, gets to hold both and be like, I love this. I love what you said. I love this place, but not so much that I won't leave it. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, I love that you said that.
Thank you.
I think this really might be something that people who are having a hard time reconciling the things Chappell Roan is saying or getting mad about things that are very intentionally written clickbait to try to make people be mad at her, they're really having a hard time reconciling what it's like to be from a place that is small and backwards and southern, I think. We'll get more into that in just a bit, but let's keep talking about her career first. So while she was still with Atlantic and after that EP, but before Pink Pony Club, which would be her final single on the record, and which we'll talk about in just a little bit, I promise, Chappell moved to California, which is something that she has these very complicated feelings about, as I said, discussed in interviews, discussed in podcasts, discussed especially in her album. One of the singles that came out prior to the release of Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess is a song called California, and it is very bittersweet and homesick.
I just felt so sad in LA, and I think that's what it was. I like really thought I would come to LA and all my dreams would come true and I would feel so like myself and that at times it was that, but for many years it was just so depressive and so heartbreaking and I felt so defeated, and I think that's what California was just inspired by just like wanting my dad to come pick me up.
Something else to know about this big move to California is that it wasn't originally intended to be what would jumpstart Chappell into a music career. It was to jumpstart what she thought her actual career would be, acting.
Well, I wanted to be an actress. I really thought I was going to be an actress. I was like in acting class, and I just was uploading it because people were telling me I had a good voice. So I just uploaded it and like made my own little EP. It was 4 songs, and I thought music was going to be a gateway into acting. I was like, this will get my foot in the door. That's what this whole thing was supposed to be. And it ended up being like my actual job.
She no longer sees that as her end goal or something she's working towards. But it feels worth mentioning towards the beginning, since it was a relevant thing to the beginning of her career. She wanted to be an actress. That she managed to create Chappell Roan, this entire character, this entire world, out of like something that she thought was just going to be a pit stop to something else she wanted is baffling to me in the best way. In the way where like the most creative person you know is always laying stuff down like it's nothing. I don't say that to imply that the character of Chappell Roan is nothing, but just to say like somebody who wants to be an artist and has spent their whole life wanting to be a musical artist could try and not come up with as good of a character to become famous as Chappell Roan. And this whole drag aesthetic came not at the very beginning of her career. It's something that she found. It's an iteration of what she had been doing. Something that seems to have come after Pink Pony Club, from my understanding of her aesthetics. There's a lot more time that I could spend on the beginning of her career. For example, I found this local news coverage of her from 2017. It explains the beginning of her career and explains even that as being the culmination of 3 years of work, and then it would end up being even more time before she ended up putting out Midwest Princess. It's pretty fascinating, though, for somebody who most likely will be eligible for Best New Artist at the Grammys next year to have had something coming out in 2017 saying that it's the culmination of work, and yet most of us didn't know about her until very recently. Chappell Roan has been putting in the work for a very long time to reach the level of success that she has. It did, in a way, happen a bit overnight. Like, once she finally hit the threshold, it doubled and tripled and quadrupled, I think far beyond what she even wanted. But it's not something that she hadn't previously been working on. It's just something where she stuck around long enough for her success to find her because she reinvented herself enough times to find the version that worked.
It's so cliche, but if you just don't stop, you make it. Eventually. I think for me, I was much closer than I thought I was. And I thought, oh my God, this is taking another 5 years. So it takes a decade, though. It's true. It takes a decade to start making money at this job.
Still, though, it was an uphill battle with a label that was doing nothing to promote her, like, increasingly good work.
We were like, okay, this feels good, but we're getting so much, like, honestly negative feedback. But I was like, this feels so fun. And I want to do stuff this route. Like, I want to have fun on stage and dance and to feel happy. And I knew I wanted that, but people, like, at the label, they just didn't want to put it out. They didn't get it. So that, like, was really confusing at the time.
But to see everyone get it now on tour, how does that feel?
I mean, it's like, damn, bitch, like, were you wrong? Like, I feel like they're shooting themselves in the foot.
So Pink Pony Club is, in my opinion, and, why I've been referencing it in so much of my backgrounds today, probably what was initially her best work. What was her best work until Good Luck Babe came out, and I don't get to talk about Good Luck Babe for a little while because of how I structured this video. Pink Pony Club is it. I mean, I mentioned earlier she didn't really find her whole, like, locking into the drag aesthetic thing until post Pink Pony Club, but, like, Pink Pony Club is truly where Chappell Roan seems to have discovered what kind of artist she wants to be, what kind of music she wants to make, and in multiple ways.
I went all the way back. I'm liking Pink Pony. You know why? It almost it almost reminds me of it doesn't even sound like it, but it's one of those songs like I'm too sexy for my shirt, you know. It's like one of those damn that song's in my head and I really don't know what it's talking about yet. So I'm gonna listen to it again so I can get the okay. Okay. Well, okay. Wait. It's one of those you have to go back and try to figure out, but I like the beat. I really, really like the beat. And I can see why it would open the door to get you to the point where you would want more and more and more and more.
So I gotta tell you some things about the Pink Pony Club for this to make any sense. Pink Pony Club is the last single that Chappell released with Atlantic Records that got the full music video treatment and got like promotion, but it didn't get a lot of promotion for reasons we're gonna get into. Chappell describes Pink Pony Club as a hard left turn from the music that she had been making. I mean, like I said before, it wasn't gay music until Pink Pony Club and beyond. Chappell has spoken about this at length. She wrote Pink Pony Club after she went to go visit the Abbey, which is a gay bar in West Hollywood. That's unsurprising to anybody familiar with the song. The song literally name drops, "I will keep dancing down in West Hollywood." Despite it being a very Californian song, though, it doesn't strike me as a song that requires you to be familiar with California to enjoy it. I mean, the song isn't called The Abbey. She's not going to go dancing at the Abbey. She wrote a song about the Abbey. It's about her experience at the Abbey. It's about the way that going to a gay bar for the first time blew her mind and rocked her world. And of course it did. She's from Willard, Missouri, where there are more cows than people. She's spoken about this over and over again in interviews, in videos, all the time she's talking about this. It's one of her favorite stories to tell. It's one of my favorite stories to listen to.
All of a sudden, I realized I could truly be any way I wanted to be, and no one would bat an eye. It was so different from home, where I always had such a hard time being myself and felt like I'd be judged for being different or being creative. I just felt overwhelmed with complete love and acceptance. And from then on, I started writing songs as the real me. I was sober the entire night. I needed to experience it sober. I danced my ass off and I didn't care. It was one of the most fun nights ever. It was shortly after I had turned 21 and I could finally go out. The Abbey was packed. There were go-go dancers on the table. And I walked in and it was the most spiritual experience.
And I was all of our safe space. You know, it was the only place we had to go was to the bar. It was the only entertainment we were welcome in. And yeah, it's a culture part of us that will never go away. And if anybody can embrace that and tie that in with their platform now and get away with it and make it work like she's doing, hats off. Kudo, kid.
But again, while this song is about the Abbey for her personally, it is not about the Abbey for all listeners. It is this bar that anybody can imagine and come up with in their head. It's any gay bar with go-go dancers. It's not even the Abbey in the music video, which I will see if I can set up clips for. I'm pretty sure I can get away with showing you clips for the music video as long as it's not, like, showing the actual song. I love this music video. I know a lot of people really love this music video. I know Chappell loves this music video. In one of the behind-the-scenes things for the music video that I watched on YouTube, she was saying that she's crying in the last shot when everybody's picking her up because she is so happy and she feels so fulfilled. She loved Pink Pony Club. She loved it a whole lot more than her label did. It seems like there's always been some friction with her label.
I always had access to my own self. But they just didn't like it. I don't know. They shot themselves in the foot. I mean,
yeah, look at you now.
Here we are.
Yeah.
I don't have it. I mean.
Yeah.
And there were multiple factors that made Pink Pony Club a complicated success. Because while it did well for a gay club song that came out in April of 2020. things weren't open, people weren't playing it and dancing to it in clubs.
And Pink Pony came out in April of 2020, the worst time for a club song to come out. And also, like, we released it in, like, the worst time in the world. Like, it came out, I'm pretty sure, like, April 2020. It was, like, the worst time ever to release a gay club song. And it still had such an impact. And I was just like, okay, this means something. And the fact that it's still such a big part of the record.
This is actually how Chappell ended up getting out of that bad record deal. Not in a triumphant way. Not because she got to walk away because something better was happening or somebody else was going to respect her vision more and let her do what she wanted to do, but because Atlantic dropped her.
Well, it's my relationship ended with my label like a lot of artists ended their relationships in 2020. You just get dropped if you're not making money in 2020. Like, music industry crashed. It was, touring is how artists make their money. And it was 2020, I wasn't touring. I got dropped because I just wasn't making money for them. Neither were most artists, unless you are massive. So many artists lost their jobs.
This was really hard on Chappell. She ended up having to move home with her parents briefly, and she accepts absolutely no sympathy in the interview that I watched when she's talking about working a regular job. I found this endearing, so I'm showing you.
Yeah, I ran out of money and moved back home with my parents and was working the drive-thru. And
oh, chap, that's hard. That's hard.
Yeah, but that's like most people. Like, most people, like, work, like, horrible jobs, you know?
So Chappell, no longer represented by Atlantic, moved back to California, and she made a deal with herself.
I just didn't have there was nothing guiding me. I didn't know what to do. I knew I liked how Pink Pony Club made me feel, but I didn't know how to access that feeling again because I wrote it when I was at a club, when I was around people, when I was having a great time. So I moved back to LA in October of 2020, and I said, I'm going to give it one more year. I'm going to give it one shot. If I don't like it by October 2021, I'll move back. But let me just try to give it a shot.
We know how that went. I mean, again, I've already mentioned it in this video, and also probably anybody watching this, just by cultural osmosis, knows what an incredible summer Chappell Roan has been having in terms of charts and success. That bet she made on herself paid off.
I think it was the best thing that could have happened in my career because I truly just, it lit a fire under my ass that I was just like, I have to try to make this work. And if I gave myself like a year to get my shit together, and if I didn't feel like it was like, this is actually what I meant to do at the end of that year, then I would just like move back home and go to college or something and just be like, okay, I tried music. You know what I mean?
Let's talk about that rise. The actual rise, not the beginning of her career, but like her getting this actual notoriety that I keep winking is very different now than was when she was that teenage girl with Atlantic. As I, and you know, many other people who already have, as you kind of try to chart out the rise of Chappell Roan over the last few months, a few things tend to stick out as the standouts. Number one, and probably most often credited, Chappell went with Olivia Rodrigo on the Guts Tour. So the Guts Tour actually wasn't the first time that Chappell and Olivia toured together. It was on her Sour Tour. If you're not is there a name for the Olivia Rodrigo fans? If you're not an Olivia head, Sour was Olivia Rodrigo's first album. It is excellent in my opinion, and this jacket is loud. So I really like Olivia Rodrigo. I have a feeling Chappell also really likes Olivia. I mean, I think they're just friends.
She's literally so sweet. She sent me her Spotify Wrapped, and I was like, her top artist. It was so kind. I was like, girl.
They have collaborated as well. Chappell is actually credited on background vocals for Lacey, which is, you know, Olivia Rodrigo's gayest song.
But I am in
Lacey,
and there's like a secret track called Obsessed. That's like on the vinyls, which I'm on that one. And I'm also on the Hunger Games song that just came out.
And they share custody of this producer guy named Dan Nigro.
Olivia Conan and I work with the same co-writer. So we're all kind of in that world.
Chappell had started working with Dan for Pink Pony Club, which, again, as I've said before, was her favorite of what she had done.
I mean, we've been working for 5 years together, and we started with California, Love Me Anyway, which is on the album, and Pink Pony Club. But it's just been a lovely journey of growing and writing better songs. And I have a blast writing with him. It's so silly and campy, and we both push each other, and it's I work best when I'm working with someone who can tell me that's not a good idea, or like just makes me better.
She kind of willingly took a back seat while Dan and Olivia worked together for Sour, and then I think kind of had her turn with Dan while she worked on Midwest Princess.
Because we all work out of the same studio, and Dan is like, are you free right now? Can you come help? And so I just like go over there and sing harmonies, because it's like really nice on a song to have kind of different tones. And she's very like, I love that she's open to having like another vocalist, and it's just, she's so sweet to me.
The other thing besides Olivia that gets credited the most for Chappell's rise is her festival performances. Chappell was performing at various music festivals this summer. I do sort of think that a lot of Chappell's big hits were made to be played to a crowd. I mean, I think she's very much like practiced enough at performance and at hyping a crowd up that she knew what would get her audience engaged, even though it did take a while to find an audience that would be engaged at the level she wanted. Chappell plays the big festivals, essentially. She's there for Bonnaroo. She's there for Coachella. Coachella was a particularly huge one for her career because it is where she debuted Good Luck Babe, which I still don't get to talk about yet. Something else I absolutely need to mention here while I am discussing her festival performances. Chappell Roan played the New York City Gov Ball. This is a huge crowd. I believe this is one of many audiences she had this summer that was literally record-breaking. Chappell showed up as Lady Liberty in an apple and smoking, with her whole ass out.
I am in drag of the biggest queen of all. But in case you had forgotten what's etched on my pretty little toes, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. That means freedom and trans rights. That means freedom and women's rights. It especially means freedom for all oppressed people in occupied territories.
So when the point of this video was the Parasocial Pony Club and not no, Chappell Roan is not a secret Republican, I had made kind of a throwaway comment about how we could tell based on this GovBall statement what Chappell Roan's politics were, and that I thought, you know what, I'm gonna play you just a little bit more of what I had said, but I was saying it in a way where that was kind of, I thought, as far as that was going to go. It is a really, truly iconic look. I mean, just for New York in general, but also and especially given that while she was on stage for the Gov Ball, she responded to a request that I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it had already circulated that she had said no to. The invitation to perform at the White House for their Pride event. Chappell responded on stage dressed as Lady Liberty. She said,
As a response to the White House, who asked me to perform for Pride. We want liberty, justice, and freedom for all. When you do that, that's when I'll come.
and I think this rules. I'm saying that as somebody who voted for Biden, as somebody who is going to vote for Kamala Harris. I think that out of the way, like, I think a performer has the right to make this kind of statement, especially the political statement of whether or not you are going to perform somewhere and be like, I mean, not even just an endorsement, but like a piece of entertainment. I think it makes a lot of sense that this is something that Chappell sat with, realized she was uncomfortable, and said no to. And while I respect her for the fact that she has those kinds of morals, even though it's not necessarily a decision that I would have even thought to criticize her for not making, like, I don't hold it against anybody who did perform at the White House for Pride this year. I would not have held it against Chappell, especially being that she's a lesbian who's having this amazing summer, and obviously this is the first summer she would have been invited to perform at the White House for Pride. This obviously means a lot to her, though. It's clear that the political level of what she's doing is not lost on her. She hasn't stumbled into using these gay aesthetics. She is a lesbian woman. Her existence is political. Her art is political. That doesn't mean that she's on the hook to give endorsements when they're requested of her. And also, like, at least we know for sure, we can promise ourselves that she's not some kind of secret Republican. Another distinction between her and Katy Perry, but we're not really getting into all that today. And in my opinion, it should have been as far as it went. However, Chappell Roan had been interviewed for Rolling Stone prior to Joe Biden dropping out of the presidential race on July 21st of 2024. The article didn't come out, though, until like right before the VMAs, and therefore after Kamala Harris had already accepted the nomination. Chappell was basically asked to update her previous comment, and the comment that she had originally made was very much in line with the statement that she had made on the stage at GovBall. Actually, I'll go ahead and read it. Roan opted to turn down the invite, though there were some who misread what she felt was a pretty clear message. I saw a couple of TikToks where they were like, "So she's pro-Trump?" Roan's face contorts into disgust. It is not so black and white that you hate one and you like the other. No matter how you say it, people are still going to be pissed for fucking some reason. I'm not going to go to the White House because I am not going to be a monkey for Pride. And thank God I didn't go because they just made a huge statement about trans kids a couple weeks ago, she says, referring to the Biden administration stating its opposition to gender-affirming surgery for transgender minors in June. The administration would walk back those comments a month later. My visit to Roan's house took place a day after an embarrassing press conference hosted by then-presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden. Roan and I commiserate over how horrifying both the presser and his recent debate with Trump had been. At the time, Roan's views echoed those of a lot of young voters, especially in the face of multiple wars, drag bans, and diminished health care access for both trans people and those seeking abortions. I'm pretty fuck the government and fuck everything that's going on right now, she says, middle fingers in the air. I don't have a side because I hate both sides and I'm so embarrassed about everything going on right now. It's updated, however, after Kamala was the nominee to say, later in July, of course, Biden would drop out of the race and Kamala Harris would become the Democratic nominee. Even after Roan turned down the White House invite, she would become a part of the campaign. Kamala HQ's official TikTok would use Femininomenon in a video edit. Harris Wald's camo hats bore a striking resemblance to Roan's Midwest Princess camo hat merch, down to the orange font. She would repost a side-by-side of the hats on Twitter with the caption, "Is this real?" During the Democratic National Convention, "Good Luck Babe" soundtracked the Missouri delegation's roll call. Right now, it's more important than ever to use your vote, and I will do whatever it takes to protect people's civil rights, especially the LGBTQ+ community, she tells me in August. My ethics and values will always align with that, and that hasn't changed with a different nominee. I feel lucky to be alive during an incredibly historical time period when a woman of color is a presidential nominee. End quote. And that is more than enough for me. I love to know that she's planning on voting for Kamala. I'm planning on voting for Kamala. Like, I do genuinely think that a vote for Kamala Harris is the correct thing in this election. What I do not think is the correct thing is the way that people have been acting. Because, like, she said she's voting for Kamala, first of all. That gets forgotten in the midst of everything else. Like, she clearly has a distinction between, like, who she says she's voting for and her feeling of not wanting to give an enthusiastic endorsement. Again, for reasons she has made very clear and for reasons that do not seem particularly conservative to me. But Twitter is Twitter. The internet is what it is. The internet loves a reason to hate a woman, and I think increasingly loves a reason to hate a lesbian woman more than anything else. Like, again, this was a pit stop, and I was going to talk about parasociality, and I was going to talk about weird expectations of fame and stan culture on women and how it's different towards women than to men. A conversation I still very much want to have and intend on having, but I want to talk about this, like, backlash that Chappell Roan is receiving over something that I really don't understand, because genuinely, and I'm saying this as probably, like, generally, I'm normally the most lib person in a group chat a lot of the times, right? I'm a Democrat in a very comfortably blue state. It's really easy to be a lib when your representatives are like Ayanna Pressley and Ed Markey and Liz Warren. Like, it's not that hard for me to like the Democratic Party in a way that I know is much harder to access for a lot of other people. My Democrats do a lot for me. A lot of Democrats in other places get blocked from being able to do good. Like, this is all very complicated, right? And Chappell's support of Palestine has not just been limited to that statement where she mentioned occupied territories and the gov ball. She has been talking about this. She has been raising funds for this. She has been sharing links. Like, she's been incredibly clear about this. And a lot of people, I think, who, like, can't read between the lines of her statement and were thinking that it was a Trump endorsement, like, maybe just don't have friends who are far enough left that they've also had to struggle to reconcile needing to vote for somebody they don't really want to vote for but have to. But I do have friends like that, and I get it, and I have a mutual respect with them, especially when they, like Chappell, as she said in that statement, when they are planning on sucking it up and voting anyway. But there's this, like, industry happening on Twitter. There are a few different Twitter accounts that are like pop base, pop news, pop crave. I think pop flop is genuinely, like, just always supposed to be mean-spirited. Pop flop especially has posted a lot of really anti-Chappell things, but also the way that the other ones have been pulling for their buzz quotes is just very not reading the whole article. But this is, I think, I mean, it's a lot of people's fault, but it is largely the fault of pop flop, because pop flop took deeply out of context something that she was saying that I think makes a lot of sense when you think about everything we've just been talking about how much she loves Willard, Missouri, about her complicated feelings about being from there and not fully being able to be herself there. To just take that out of context and be like, Chappell Roan says she's fine having Republican family members or whatever. And it's like, okay, but also that's not even something anyone gets to vote on. I'm saying this as somebody who is estranged from almost all of my family. Like, even the very limited relationship that I do have left, we do not agree about politics. We don't talk about it. It is not up to anybody else to be telling Chappell Roan that she needs to become fully estranged from her entire family of origin. And especially not to say that she needs to do that as somebody who has just shot into such enormous amounts of fame and success in a way that she's, like, not prepared for. Like, I'm sorry, I don't think best practice here is to tell her to cut off her family. And I guess that's what people want. I guess that's what people would be satisfied by, but I don't even know about that, because here's a relative she has not spoken about talking to, because yeah, she talks about her parents, she talks about having a relationship with her grandparents. I've never heard of her mentioning this uncle, but somebody on Twitter decides to go and dig up the fact that she has a Republican elected official uncle. And listen, I know somebody who was mad about me calling Rachel Johnson Boris Johnson's sister in my video is probably ready to call me a hypocrite or something, but, like, I think there's a big difference between what I did in that video and people who are trying to claim that this man is somebody that Chappell Roan supports. So I should back up a little bit. But the reason why this legislator uncle, who seems to be a transphobic piece of shit and also who I don't have any reason to believe Chappell is close to, got drug up and put into this whole mess on Twitter is because Chappell eventually responded to this clickbait that was forming around her, these rumors that were swelling that she's some secret conservative. I intended in the original version of this video to go over another set of 2 TikToks that Chappell Roan made to try to communicate her point, and I'm saving those for the next one. But if you've seen Chappell Roan's Boundaries TikToks and you're wondering why I'm not bringing them up, it's, again, just, I wanted to speak to this relatively soon. I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of things to say about it, and I'm probably going to agree with a lot of people in commentary with what they have to say about this, but I still just, I want to say my version. So this was the first video that she uploaded.
I have encouraged people to use critical thinking skills, learn about what they're voting for, learn about who they're voting for, and ask questions. And it's being completely taken out of context, per usual. There is nuance to what I say in interviews. And I think it's important that people use critical thinking. I think it's important for me to question authority and question world leaders and question myself, question my algorithm, question if some person that tweeted something about someone else is even true. It's important to question because that's how I think we move forward. This is my third election in voting, and the world is changing so rapidly, and I want to be part of the generation that changes things for good because we need it. If you come to my shows, if you read my full interviews, if you literally know anything about me and for what I stand for, you know that this is not lip service, this is not virtue signaling, that my actions have always paved the way for my project and the people who really know me. Actions speak louder than words, and actions speak louder than an endorsement. Here's the full quote that a lot of people are just not reading. I have so many issues with our government in every way, she says. There are so many things that I would want to change, so I don't feel pressured to endorse someone. There's problems on both sides, and I encourage people to use your critical thinking skills. Use your vote. Vote small. Vote for what's going on in your city. The change she wants to see in the U.S. is this election year, she says, instantly is trans rights. They cannot have cis people making decisions for trans people, period. So, hear it from my mouth, if you're still wondering. No, I'm not voting for Trump. And yes, I will always question those in power and those making decisions over other people. And I will stand up for what's right and what I believe in. And it's always at the forefront of my project. And I'm sorry that you fell for the clickbait.
And that's where the criticism is coming from here, that Chappell Roan is secretly a Republican, that Chappell Roan is trying to play both sides, that Chappell Roan has more criticism for Kamala Harris than she does for her own uncle. And their evidence is her uncle shared a post all the way back in 2017 of her initial EP, which I will remind you just one more time, completely straight music from when she had a boyfriend who she was intending to marry. And a post from 2023 where he was being a total piece of shit and fear-mongering about drag queens. So clearly he's not on board with her current project. And I'm even seeing people very confidently, and maybe just to be a total asshole, be like, oh, she took her drag name after her transphobic uncle. And it's you can literally just look on Wikipedia. It's on Wikipedia. You can Google it. The AI summary will probably also tell you the right thing. I've got a lot of feelings about this, obviously, so let's start to unpack some of that. So, okay, considering everything I said earlier about how I'm a pretty normie lib, I think that it would be disingenuine of me to sit here... Disingenuous? Disingenuine. No, disingenuous is the word, right? I don't know. It would be insincere. It would be insincere of me to sit here and say that I didn't initially think oh, maybe she could have phrased that in a slightly better way when I watched her first TikTok, but I also primarily was just yeah, no, her other politics have been incredibly clear. I know where she stands. I know that any distrust that she is voicing in the Democratic Party is coming from a left perspective and not from a right perspective. But I did have a moment of oh, I wish she had said Kamala's name correctly. I do think, I'm not saying that I don't believe that Chappell Roan has done her own research. I believe that Chappell Roan has looked very much into things, especially regarding Palestine. Again, something she has been incredibly active about otherwise. It's primarily people who are upset with her support of the Palestinian struggle and of people in Gaza, and of her not just voiced but also financial support of people suffering in Gaza. Those are primarily, I think, the people who were really, really mad about this. But there's also a lot of normie Dems who also disagree with what the Democrats are funding, along with the rest of America right now. And they're also jumping on this hate train because it's convenient and because it's fun to refer to Chappell Roan as Raggedy Ann or whatever. And it's just, All of that was so immediately outsized to any, like, minor criticism that I had of the way that Chappell phrased that on top of me just already being kind of ride or die for Chappell Roan, I'm like, okay, fuck it. She had every right to say that. She had every right to say it the way she said it. Nobody should have really cared this much. I actually, and it's something that she clarifies as well, you know, that this is her third election in voting. Mine too. And I don't remember in all three of the previous elections I've been very aware of as they were happening, this much, like, fervor over attempting to bully women into endorsing, and endorsing in a specific way that you want them to. I've had thoughts about this already because of Taylor Swift. Longtime channel viewers know I have lots of thoughts about Taylor Swift. At least with Taylor Swift, though, it made sense, this pressure to endorse, because she had branded herself as Miss Americana. She had a whole documentary about it, you know, multiple songs where the whole conceit is like, I'm a Democrat. And I'm not even referring to the trailer park, you need to calm down. I'm talking about, like, there's songs. Miss Americana is a song. There's a song called Only the Young, which is funny. I think actually, like, maybe she disconnected a bit from politics because she released a song called Only the Young Can Run, and then it was an old man. But anyway, like, okay, it made a little bit of sense to pressure Taylor Swift for an endorsement. Not in quite the way that it happened. Like, I do think that also was a little bit outsized, especially considering the fact that it, like, quite literally becomes a safety risk at a certain point. Like, it just does. I'm not saying that means it's a safety risk people shouldn't take, but I am saying it's a risk people are clearly aware of. It's a risk Taylor Swift was clearly aware of. We'll talk more about this in a future video. I'm sure I'm going to have a lot more political takes before the election happens. I'm very sorry to all of my non-United States of America followers. But the hate train did not slow down after her first video, even though I thought, you know, honestly, also, while I'm at it, I thought her whole sorry you fell for the clickbait thing, I thought that was great. I really liked that. I thought it was, like, perfectly pointed. So the next day, she followed up again and made another video. This one really did not make things better, I don't think, though it did clarify some of her positions, I guess, to people who had been paying a bit less attention to her actions.
I just woke up, and to, like, people just skewing it even more, endorsing and voting are completely different. I don't agree with a lot of what is going on with, like, policies. Like, obviously, fuck the policies of the right, but also fuck some of the policies on the left. That's why I can't endorse. That's why I can't, like, put my entire name and my entire project behind one. Because there is no way I can stand behind some of the left's completely transphobic and completely genocidal views. So yeah, there are huge problems on both. You know what is right and wrong. And so do I. Fuck Trump for fucking real, but fuck some of the shit that has gone down in the Democratic Party that has failed people like me and you. And more so, Palestine. And more so, every marginalized community in the world. So no, I'm not gonna settle for what the options that are in front of me. And you're not gonna make me feel bad for that. So yeah, I'm voting for fucking Kamala. But I'm not settling for what has been offered, because that's questionable. It's questionable that our actions of our government, the actions of the internet, the actions of you and me. If this is what you are not understanding, you know what? Endorsing someone, if someone is publicly endorsing a political figure, that doesn't even mean that they're gonna fucking vote for them. Because as I said in my other video, actions speak louder than words. And I'm not gonna let this narrative of like me not playing both sides. No. This is not me playing both sides. This is me questioning both sides because this is what we have in front of us. So if you look at my statement and you're still like, she's just playing both sides, like she doesn't want to, no, you're not getting it. I'm critiquing both sides because they're both so fucked up. Voting is all we have right now in the system. And so I encourage it yet again, vote for who in your mind is the best option for what we have right now. Because that's all we can do. And I hope this makes it clear that no, I'm not picking the sides of what we have right now. Yes, one's obviously better than the other. But Jesus fucking Christ, I hope you don't settle for what we have and put your name behind someone that you don't fully trust because of their blatant actions.
So, some nuance here. I agree with what Chappell Roan is saying, that a vote and an endorsement are not the same thing. Again, for the sake of being, like, willing to criticize somebody I like the same way that I would criticize somebody I don't like, she does lose me a little bit when she says that some people who are publicly endorsing are not then voting for that person. Like, I don't believe that that's really a strategy that happens. I don't think that I don't understand that. But I do understand what she's getting at and the greater messages. And it's one of those things like the fact that she mispronounced Kamala Harris's name. It's Kamala, like, Kamala. But I really don't think that her mispronouncing it is, like, what people are trying to pretend it is, which is some kind of right-wing Fox News dog whistle because Trump also mispronounces Kamala's name. I think, like, it would be good, especially in conjunction with telling people to do their own research and see if what people are saying about people is true, to maybe listen to how somebody introduces themselves and adjust your pronunciation to match theirs. But I also don't take that, especially in conjunction with her saying that she's planning on voting for her, as, like, an intentional slight, really. I think a lot of people just read the name and got used to a pronunciation in their head and have not yet been like, it's maybe a little bit racist of me to refuse to learn how to pronounce this black woman's name, right? But I do also really appreciate what she's saying in terms of the fact that she can't put her whole project behind something because, as we've already stated, Chappell does not consider the Chappell Roan project to be just herself. So if she feels like she is speaking for all of her creative collaborators and everything else that they're trying to achieve, we don't know what conversations are happening behind the scenes. She shouldn't be under pressure as the spokesperson for all of them to, like, you know what I mean? It's the same thing as not wanting to be a prop for Pride. Like, if you don't specifically want to be a mouthpiece for a regime, you don't have to. Like, you can. To be clear, I think Freedom is an excellent song for Beyonce's campaign. I'm really glad she's using it. I'm really glad Beyonce is letting her use it and that Beyonce, like, endorsed her. I also just don't think every single musician is on the hook to do endorsements in every election cycle for the rest of our lives, even though I do believe that this is a very important election. And I just can't imagine what it would be like to try to be as clear as Chappell has been about where my feelings and my priorities lie and then be intentionally misinterpreted to the extent that she is with all of this. It would be incredibly frustrating, and I feel like I can see that frustration in this second video. It feels parasocial for me to sit here and be like, well, I can tell she's really stressing herself out, but, like, I can tell she's really stressing out about this. And of course she is. Like, this would be a hard thing to insulate yourself from, I feel like, when it keeps escalating the way that it has. Pretty much all summer, Chappell Roan has been, like, I almost just said match in a thunderstorm, and that's not a thing. But, like kite and key in a thunderstorm, like, fire starter, conversation starter. Like, she has been discourse starting a lot this summer. Discourse starting about things that she said about maybe not really enjoying or appreciating fame in the way that people think that she should. Things that she said, again, about boundaries. Something I want to cover in my other video about her because I just need a little more time to work on that one. But, like, this thing that she's saying that sounds very reasonable, and that, like, the things that I'm feeling like I'm more informed than her about are very surface level things. And, like, yeah, everybody should be very engaged in democracy, but also, like, no shit, I've had more time to watch, like, the debate and be both keeping up with and having some kind of hope for electoral politics. Like, it's not surprising to me that this woman who is, like, experiencing this absolutely crazy roller coaster of becoming extremely famous and being extremely busy is maybe not watching the same news I am. But something I know that we do share is, like, a deep distress over what's happening, and especially what's being done with the funding and the blessing of the United States of America. Like, I appreciate and agree with her saying that that's something that makes it hard for her to vote. And I really appreciate her saying that she, like me, is voting anyway. If she gave this exact speech about not wanting to settle for the two options and then ended it with, and that's why I'm voting for Jill Stein, or, and that's why I'm leaving the top of my ballot empty, and so should you, yeah, I would be annoyed. I would think that it was reckless. But that's not what she said. Is it, JoJo? Yeah? And to pretend like she's saying any of this in a way that's an attempt to play both sides is, I think, incredibly just unfair and unintelligent. That's not what she's saying. She does not sound, and has never, to me, sounded particularly concerned with keeping Republicans in her audience happy. But I think that there's this desire to pretend that just because maybe your politics are ending at the ballot box in a way that Chappell Roan's aren't, that you are further left than her. And that's leading to a lot of what I can best describe as, like, political paternalism happening on Twitter, and I guess also TikTok. I've only seen the TikToks that have migrated over to Twitter after the fact, though. People cutting in to be like, oh, wow, well, babe. And just, like, really smarmy, condescending responses to her TikToks. And it's like, who are you helping? She said she's voting the way we want her to. Is this going to encourage other people who feel like Chappell? Because this is the thing. This is the thing that I think is being forgotten by all of these liberals who are really upset with what Chappell is saying. Just like in that Rolling Stone article, Chappell is voicing what a lot of young voters are feeling. A lot of young voters are not super stoked about Kamala Harris, and that's fine. I'm willing and able at times to muster more enthusiasm than others for my vote for Kamala, for what I think Kamala's administration is going to do. But like Chappell, I have to vote with my conscience, and I have to vote for what I can do to protect people's rights and liberties, and that's always going to be a Democrat for me. I don't need other people who are eventually going to do the same math and land on the same results to also be willing to say, yeah, that's Democrats. As long as they're doing the same math as me, it's fine. The discourse surrounding this has been hellish, as has most discourse around Chappell Roan this summer. This is the second time that she's faced pretty severe, from what I'm witnessing, backlash for canceling an appearance for, the first one was a concert. This one is a festival performance for All Things Go Festival this weekend in New York City. We'll talk more about, the backlash that happened when she canceled a show to perform at the VMAs, because that all, again, like I said, that was more fan backlash, and I am seeing some fan backlash for this, but I'm also just seeing more and more people be like, well, she can't take it. Chappell announced, admittedly, yes, at the last second, that she would not be performing at All Things Go. The statement posted read, I apologize to people who have been waiting to see me in New York City and DC this weekend at All Things Go, but I am unable to perform. Things have gotten overwhelming over the past few weeks, and I am really feeling it. I feel pressures to prioritize a lot of things right now, and I need a few days to prioritize my health. I want to be present when I perform and give the best shows possible. Thank you for understanding. Heart. Be back soon. XOX. And the festival itself posted too, saying, we're heartbroken to announce that Chappell Roan will no longer be performing at this year's festivals. While we know how much you were looking forward to the performances, it's important to remember that health and well-being always comes first. All Things Go strongly supports artists prioritizing their well-being, and we ask our community to rally around Chappell Roan with love and understanding. Let's continue to show the world that music fans support not just the art, but the artists themselves. I feel about this incredibly similarly to how I feel about when she canceled that show prior to the VMAs, which also was kind of during the height of a hate train on her, which is that I think it's a position that a lot of people don't want to examine, that they are betraying a lot of what they think their most deeply held beliefs are about workers and workers' rights if they don't believe that performers also get to call off. I know it's easy for me to say that. I'm not like a concert person. I've never lost hundreds of dollars worth of concert and travel tickets for something because I don't go to expensive concerts. I don't go in big crowds. I would be really sad if the day that I had tickets to something, it ended up not happening, but also, especially with festivals, the lineup is always subject to change. And also just like, again, if you believe that a normal person should be able to call out from their normal job, you should also believe that about somebody who is a performer. And it's not even as if she's just like somebody who has nothing else going on in her life and is calling in "internet hates me" so that she doesn't have to perform at a festival. Chappell Roan has been very open about her bipolarity, and that's something that I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to talk about in this video or save for the next one. A lot of the discussion that I had, especially with my friend, I think I am going to save for the next one, but I want to talk about that in this context just because, like, Chappell Roan is diagnosed with bipolar 2 and has also, even more recently than that, spoken about getting an additional diagnosis of a major depressive episode on top of that. Chappell is a mentally ill woman. Another reason why I think that it's not particularly progressive to be insistent that she cut off her whole support system and her family before she's ready to, if she's ever ready to. Chappell has been incredibly open about her mental health and her struggles with that. Hello? And again, something else like that bipolarity that I'll get to in the, more ambitious conversation than this one. I really think a lot of what we see, a lot of the way that people are just so indescribably weird about her, I really think it comes from being a lesbian. Like, I just do. I can't help it. I think that it probably actually, like, and this is something that might be fighting words. People might disagree with me about this. I say this with love in my heart for bisexual women. I do think that there are a lot of people who are famous who have benefited from adopting very nebulous, oh, I don't like to name things sort of labels, and maybe in a parallel universe I could possibly, potentially, maybe another man would hold my hand, and then they get a lot of queer credit for, like, wearing ugly skirts or something. Can you tell I'm talking about Harry Styles yet? And it's not even particularly just Harry Styles, but, like, you know what I mean? Somebody who kind of, like, hints and hints at being gay without having to actually ever commit to it, and then questioning whether or not they're actually gay or if they're just profiting off of it. That's a no-no, because that might be accidentally biphobic, even when these people often, cough, cough, Katy Perry, haven't actually described themselves as bisexual. You know what I mean? And so, would those people be being accused of being a fake bisexual if they voiced hesitation with Kamala Harris? Would it be as quick for people to say, oh, Raggedy Ann makes money off of the LGBT community and doesn't actually care about them and is throwing them under the bus for her conservative uncle? Or are they saying that because she's a lesbian? You know what I mean? And I don't think they know they're saying that because she's a lesbian. I don't think a lot of people who know why they're being weird about the way that they feel about points I'm making know that they're feeling weird about it because I'm a lesbian, but, like, they certainly do. I wouldn't be accused of having a crush on women I criticize if people didn't have weird opinions about lesbians that they don't know they need to unpack, right? And so that's one place where it really does bother me to see people saying that she's using LGBT aesthetics, that she's profiting off of things. And it's like, not only is she just getting money that she deserves for songs that are very explicitly gay and about women, but also other artists do that and you don't give a shit. Also, like, unfortunately, there are even conservative lesbians. They exist. Conservative gay people exist. Conservative trans people exist. Brianna Wu. Like, I don't even need to say more, right? Like, there are actual people who are in the LGBT community who are regressive, who are transphobic, even if they are trans themselves, who are conservative, who are doing a lot less than Chappell is for actually progressive causes. we still shouldn't take away their identity either. Like, that's just not something that you get to bestow and take away based on how much you like the way that another person is playing politics. It's fucked up. The way people are treating Chappell Roan is fucked up. I'm, like, genuinely, and I know that this is a fear that I share with a lot of people, like, the more we see this happen, the more we see these absolutely unwarranted hate trains on her, and the more we see her needing to take a step back and reassess, the more we see her reevaluating her relationship with fame, the more I'm thinking, these motherfuckers are going to ruin it for all of us. We are going to have had Chappell Roan. We are going to have had this amazing, wonderful lesbian pop star drag queen coming out and setting a fucking castle on fire at the VMAs and singing a song about compulsory heterosexuality and then quitting the spotlight because everybody was terrible to her. And I wouldn't even blame her for it, but I would blame everybody else. I would, and I will. Chappell Roan is a gift. We are not giving her a gift in return. We are being incredibly shitty to her, and I'm tired of it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. I want to push back on it. I don't think she deserves this mob that she's getting. And something that I want to try to do with my voice, even though I know Chappell Roan doesn't really particularly need my defense, is just voice that we should push back harder when we notice mobs against women forming. A lot of my friends have been very concerned about this. I love my friends. You'll meet even more of them in part 2. Like I said, I'd already been working on part 2 for so long, and I just wanted to put this together and put something out about all of this while it's relevant. Like, fan culture being weird, that's gonna stay pretty relevant for a while, right? But this is, this is what's going on this week. I had said that I really wanted to try to get the Chappell Roan video out this week. I still have, at least an hour and a half of footage in the can on the other one. Not to mention lots more interview footage. You'll see more of Tim. You'll see more of Rachel Ann. You'll meet my friend Erin. You will meet my friend Danny, who's like a Taylor Swift expert. We talked a lot about the through line between Taylor Swift and Chappell Roan and the way people are weird about both of them before this politics thing added another connecting thread. Like I said before, you can find a lot of that already up on the Patreon, and more of it should be up soon, but I'm not entirely sure when. I'm going to continue working on part 2, but I do think I'm going to start working on some of those videos that I put up in that poll sooner than I'm going to upload part 2, so we'll see when part 2 comes out. I would love to know what you think of all of this. I'd love to know what you think of Chappell Roan. Things you'd like to see discussed in part 2 also. Do you want to go track by track on the album? Should we not go track by track on the album? What are you thinking? Don't try to bully people into being more enthusiastic about voting for Kamala than they need to be in order to just vote. And if you're not enthusiastic about Kamala, consider voting anyway, because even though it sucks, it is the best option we have. Chappell's right. We don't have to settle for it, as in we don't have to settle for it as an end goal. We do have to settle for it when we have to make a choice. If you're able to vote in November, please vote against Donald Trump, and please vote against Donald Trump and for somebody who is able to beat him, meaning somebody who is on the ballot in all 50 states, somebody who is not a grifter like Jill Stein. Thank you so much for watching. I will be back again to talk about something else very soon, and I will be back again to talk about Chappell very soon as well. I love you very much. I love Chappell. I love all of my wonderful Patreon members, a few of whom's name you could see on the screen now. You can find links for that and other ways to support me in the description below. And even though I didn't talk about half the things I was going to talk about Chappell Roan, that's it for right now. Thanks for watching. Bye.